It's my pleasure to be here today on another session of AI for the Better. My guest for today is Shiva Jayagopal. He's the co-founder of WinVinaya Foundation, an NGO which focuses on providing education and the relevant skills in niche technologies for things like data visualization, software development, and RPA, which allows persons with disability from weaker economic backgrounds to be able to pick up such skills which helps them to have an independent livelihood. Shiva, a very warm welcome to you and thank you for being here. And if you could just share a little bit more background about yourself and about WinVinaya to get started.
I've been in this IT sector for almost 30 plus years. Now we run a private company called WinVinaya Infosystems and the foundation, which is WinVinaya Foundation. So I come from a lower middle class family. So a lot of people supported us, which is what enabled me to come to where I am today. So we always felt that we got to give back to society. Then we thought, and Akila, one of the co-founders of WinVinaya Foundation, she has been working with persons with disabilities for almost 20 years. So when I was looking at upskilling, especially in IT skills, because that is the only thing that I know, whatever little I know, and that is what I know. And whereas Akila was into the disability sector, she said, okay, now why can't we do something for persons with disabilities? So that's how the whole thing happened. In the last 8 years, we have trained about close to 1,500 people. 85% of them are persons across 18 different disabilities, women, persons below poverty line. As you said, in latest skills, it could be the full stack Java development, it could be AI tools, data visualization tools like Power BI, even for a person with visual impairment. So the question is, can you even teach visual tools for visually impaired, right? But it is possible because those tools are accessible. But unless we try it, we will never know. So, that is what we firmly believe within WinVinaya, that it's important for you to keep challenging the norms, the status quo. Then once you enable them with better skills and when they get better jobs, then they can get decent income and lead a life with dignity. So that is what we focus a lot.
Wonderful. So with AI now in the fray, as you know, artificial intelligence, it's there in the forefront of everything. How is AI being used in helping train people, as well as, are they actually working on things with artificial intelligence?
So let us say we have to create a training plan because we train people on various skills, right? So let us say the trainers have to create some training plan. Then they will create in their own way, and then then we will have discussions, and then we'll take it forward. Today, if you look at it, our trainers go to various AI tools. It could be the ChatGPT, Perplexity, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, any of those things, or many times a combination of them. And they go and ask, I want to do this kind of training. Let us say I want to train people on financial accounting. And they will go and say, okay, now I want to do it for persons with visual impairment. I want to do it for persons with intellectual disabilities. I want to do it for persons who are deaf. Then they ask it to customize it. The lesson plans. They ask it to customize the learning content with examples which are relevant to that particular disability. All these things, if you look at it, it was very difficult for us to look at it that way, even a few years back. But today, all the way from creating the lesson plan, creating the learning content, and making it simplified so that persons across disabilities. For example, let us say you're talking about a person with intellectual disabilities. You got to train them very differently from if you are going to train a person with locomotor disability. We are even training, many schools, colleges. We are going and training their teachers as to whatever is helping us as to how they can also use some of these tools to help all the way from lesson plan to creating the learning content to creating accessible and assessments, continuous assessments. But what about the candidates who are learning? It could be school students, college students, it could be even graduates, right? So, or even people working in companies. Now, as we are learning many of these technologies, the latest technologies which are coming, or even concepts, and let's say somebody wants to learn differentiation or integration and stuff like that, and if it is something difficult for a person with, let us say, visual impairment, they can ask, can you explain this to in a way that a person who's 5-year-old or 10-year-old can understand? And it gives beautiful examples. It's mind-boggling as to what AI can do in simplifying the concepts so that people can learn, number one. Number two is let us say it is giving something in English. You can ask it to just convert it on the fly into any Indian languages. It converts it, right? And the Indian sign language has a different grammar than English grammar. Let us say you put a text out there, which is in English, and say, can you convert the same thing in English, but in ISL grammar? So that a deaf can easily understand. Trust me, within seconds, it does it, right? And the deaf person normally writes in their own ISL grammar, which is very different from English grammar. They write it, ask it to just translate into professional English. Seconds, it gives it, right? So there's tremendous amount of power in terms of simplifying the content, in terms of, let us say, we have had candidates who take these questions, answer it in AI tools, and then say, okay, now this is what I've written. Can you evaluate it? Right? So they don't even have to wait for the teacher now. They can just ask it to evaluate it. It evaluates and gives them the scores. Then they can go back and say, can you give me better answers? Right? It's able to give better answers. So think about that whole thing. Previously, persons with disabilities might be very uncomfortable asking the teachers. The teachers may or may not have the bandwidth or the patience to explain it. But now they can just converse with these AI tools. And the beauty is it need not be only text, right? It can be through audio. It can be in our Indian languages. And it's able to understand and then converse back to you. Bhashini, which is one of the AI tools which is out there, it's able to convert into so many Indian languages.
What are the challenges that you see in incorporating AI in normal educational things? Is it easily accessible to everybody today?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Farangis. So the first thing that I'm realizing is when we talk to, because we have been working with the different schools, colleges and all that, the first thing what we are realizing is the lack of awareness. Many are not even aware that all these things are out there, And if you look at some of the people whom we have worked with, some of them are afraid of these AI tools, right? So they come and tell me that, Shiva, I believe that this AI will replace me, right? So my submission to them is, AI will not replace you, but a person who knows AI will replace you, right? So it's better that you learn AI, because, you cannot go back and say, I will, I never used a phone, so I will not use phone. Whether you like it or not, mobile phone is there, smartphones are there. A lot of things have changed. Any technology will have it good and bad, but the more we are aware about that, I think we can harness the power of that. So I would say the lack of knowledge is the biggest impediment, Farangis, right? The second thing could be, in certain things, there is a free version which is available, which will allow them to do a few things. But after that, there is a cost involved. So the cost could be the second one, which could be a barrier. And the third, for example, could be the bias also. So that could be unconscious bias, which is already fed into AI. So the output that it gives, we should not take it as granted. We should also be slightly more careful. For example, let us say you go and ask and tell me the CEO of a particular company and ask for various industries and all that, and say, okay, now are they disabled or not? Most likely, it will give you examples of people who are not disabled, right? So because not enough data is fed, which says, okay, now these are people who are CEOs and also persons with disabilities. So there could be some bias with that. And the fourth, I would say, is that, just like any technology, we should not take it as God sent. It is not. It is going to give you information based on what it learned, what is the data that has been fed. Certain things could be very inaccurate. So it's very important for us to, get that information, but also double check that, before using it. So I would start with awareness, cost, and some of these things.
This is more for educators who are working in the space of persons with disabilities, right?
I'm saying it both ways, Farangis. Yeah. So even people in the mainstream schools, when we go and talk to them about many of these AI tools, right? So they are struggling. It could be just their lack of bandwidth or whatever, but they are struggling in, with how do they create the content and everything. And for example, you can easily go and ask, give me the question paper. AI tool. It will give you the question paper. It can help the teachers very well. They can ask it to customize it based on different, difficulty levels, and, looking at all the previous question papers of, let us say, GE, and, give me a customized one, it could give it to you. Educators can go and ask, give me the answers also in something that can be easily understandable for my students. It can give you all those things, right? But if they're not aware of the power of it, it's very likely that they will always go with the traditional mode of doing things, right?
The learning curve in the adoption for them, I would say. The
Yeah,
resistance to try something new.
correct. Yeah. So that is always there, for anybody that is there. Even when we were trying to implement that within WinVinaya, there was a lot of hesitation initially, right? But once they started seeing the power of it as to how it is improving their efficiency, within WinVinaya Farangas, we use it for multiple things. One is for the lesson plans. Today, many of the proposals which we create for asking for funds for grants from different CSR groups, most of the proposals we run it through the AI. Let us say we want to create a policy. We ask AI to help us with policies. There are so many things that, we do it on a day-to-day basis that we first ask, did he end up using AI? We went for a WinVinaya family trip recently. AI can give you so many things about all the way from travel plan to estimates to expense management and everything. The entire thing, it can help you with it, right? So I think it's a matter of, as you rightly said, it could be the awareness and also that hesitation about learning and some learning curve. If you can bridge that, I think, magic can easily happen.
Can you just share, the people who are with you right now in the foundation, how they are using AI for their personal thing of learning?
In WinVinaya Foundation, 50% of our employees are persons with the disabilities, Parangas. We have people who are completely deaf, people who are completely blind, people with visual impairment. We have interns who are persons with intellectual disabilities. We have a whole slew of people across disabilities and persons without disabilities also. The other day, one of our employee with the visual impairment, and he wanted to cook something, right? And he just went and asked, okay, this is what I'm planning to cook. Can you give me suggestions? Then it gave some suggestions. Believe it or not, it also gave a link to a YouTube channel, which is run by a person with visual impairment, who's talking about how to cook. And, that lady with the visual impairment is explaining various recipes and how she's cooking, and this guy was extremely happy. The other day, I went with one other friend who was a person with visual impairment, one of our colleagues. And a couple of years back, I went with the same guy to a restaurant to order, and I will read out the menu. Then he will pick up. This time I said, okay, now, Sai, okay, let me read out the menu. He said, Shiva sir, wait. Then he took the Microsoft Seeing AI app. He showed it. It's reading that menu. Okay, then he's coming back and saying, Shiva sir, what do you want? So it is the other way around. So, the AI, if you look at it, it's giving tremendous amount of power to them, right? If you talk to a deaf, for example, Zoom, they go to Zoom, they ask for closed caption, they go to MS Teams, ask for closed captions. They ask it to summarize the entire meeting contents. Previously people have to sit and take notes, and especially for a person who's deaf, when people are talking in English very fast, it's very difficult for them to understand. So the closed captions, which is generated by AI, is a godsend, trust me. And after that, when taking the notes and sharing that later on, that is a beautiful thing for people across disabilities. Think about a person with visual impairment who struggles to take notes, right? Or a person who's deaf, who's looking at it, looking at the interpreter, and how do they take notes? Or a person with the learning disability. These are tremendously helpful. So today, it can be even on some of these things. We have smart boards within WinVinaya Farangas. On the smart boards, whatever you are talking, it is able to convert that into text, which means a deaf person can understand. Think about a traditional classroom. The teacher will say, look at what I'm writing on the board. How will a person with visual impairment look at what is written on the board? Now, the same thing, the teacher is writing something on the board and it is reading out automatically, right? So the person who can read, by seeing, they can easily read. Okay, the person who needs audio to listen, the teacher is doing the same thing, except that they're now writing on the smart board. So if you look at the AI, as long as we have some of these assistive tech Farangas, suddenly you can have an inclusive class. You can have persons with and without disabilities in the same class. With the closed caption, a deaf person can understand. With the audio, a person with visual impairment can understand. And, by the traditional writing thing, a person without disability can understand. So And within WinVinaya, when let us say we create any training material, right, through PowerPoint, we go to Microsoft PowerPoint, go to the accessibility checker. There is a basic thing. It will automatically tell us whether we have the headings, whether the reading order is proper, whether we have alternate text for the images or not. All these simple things, color contrast, is it better or not? Even if I look, a couple of years back, I don't think that facility was easily visible to people. Now it's so much more visible, and you can use AI to ask, let's say you give an image, and you can ask AI to give that entire background and all those things. It can give a better description, which was not even possible sometime back. Many of the deaf candidates and even our deaf trainers, Farangis, they struggle with English communication. But today, the way they write the emails, you cannot figure that out. In the last 1 year, and I would say the efficiency has only increased tremendously within WinVinaya, right? So, and this is what we are sharing with more people. Yesterday, we started a training program for a deaf school in Tiruvannamalai in AI to the teachers. The more we do things like this, I'm sure that power of AI, the more it reaches, then I think it will make a tremendous difference.
If they are in the same classroom, because today that is not a reality. You have a separate
exactly.
for persons with vision impairment, separate school for persons with deaf.
Yeah.
They're always feeling differentiated or aside. But in the future, if that's possible, that, in one place everybody is together, I think that would be like super.
Your point is very valid, Farangas, because in this world, all of us are together, right? But as I said, in the schools, there are advantages having exclusive schools, and there are advantages of having inclusive schools, right? Previously, we didn't have any of these technologies, right? So, what worked sometime back, the question is, should it work the same way now? And then you don't have to think about inclusion and, awareness, because the students are themselves aware, right? When they become graduates, they're aware. When they become employees, they're aware. Now, because there is a lot of, lack of awareness, now we are thinking about all these orientation programs to corporates and all that, because they never had friends, school friends or college friends who are persons with people across disabilities. And right now, when we are talking about education, we are talking about livelihood and everything. But life is not just livelihood, right? So there are so many things. They'll have to go to a shop to buy things, right? And let us say a person with the visual impairment wants to go and buy a dress, right? And they will have to lean on somebody else to explain the dress to them, right? Now they can use the seeing a kind of tool and say, explain this to me, right? Or they could use, the glasses, wearable devices which have AI and which can explain things to them. So previously, let us say 10, 15 years back, if a deaf person has to communicate with his parents, with friends or something like that, it would be very, very tough. Whatever we had was feature phones. The best they can do is text. And their English is not that great anyway. And texting is not very easy. But with a smartphone, all that they are doing now is a simple WhatsApp video call. And they're doing sign language, and the other person is understanding it, and they are communicating back. It can be friends, family, anybody. The same smartphone, you turn around and look at a person with visual impairment. Now they are able to book a ride on Uber. They're able to book tickets, train tickets, bus tickets. They're able to order something that can deliver things within 10 minutes. They're able to do these things without the help of others. They can book Number Metro tickets, using smartphone. So, the smartphone, in a way, it has made their life so much more better. Right? We have deaf employees who takes multiple buses to reach their hometown. They can write whatever they want to write. They can tell the location. They can, whatever they write, they can ask it to voice it out, get the tickets, ask for change, anything. When we talk about dignity, we think about livelihood. That is not the only thing. That is an important thing, but that's not the only thing for them to live a life with the dignity, right? When they are not dependent on somebody else, when they're able to take decisions on their own, and when they want to do what they believe is the right thing for them to do, giving them that power to do things, that itself is beautiful. Today, if you look at India, most of the persons with the visual impairment, they don't take STEM education at 8. That need not be there, right? Because if the learning materials can be made accessible, we can make it tactile, where they can touch and feel, understand the science concepts, the math concepts, nothing like it.
What is the landscape for persons with disability? How many people actually have the privilege of getting the education and how many people land up in jobs?
World Health Organization, there are about 15 to 16% of the world population are persons with disabilities. In India, there are some estimates which says there are about 70 million people who are persons with disabilities, right? Among persons with disabilities, there is also another statistic which says only 6% are graduates, just 6%, right? And even though there are a couple of percentage of quota which is available in public sector and government units, and be it in the private sector or be it in the public sector, Farangis, only 0.5% of persons with disabilities are there. WinVinaya Foundation, we have 50% of our employees are also persons with disabilities. And we have seen tremendous value, by having them. We have seen that when you have persons with visual impairment, a person who's deaf, a person with intellectual disability, a person with the locomotor disability, sometimes the kind of questions they ask, sometimes the kind of ideas they give, very, very different, very innovative. Right. So that is one thing that we have seen work beautifully for us. The other thing that we have seen is generally, as long as you give them an inclusive space, you give them good growth, they don't quit and go. So the attrition levels are much, much lower. And the third is you just have to keep them the same bar, keep the bar very high. Then they will also produce very good value. Now, many companies, and the private companies have the right intention, but they're struggling to change the mindset of many of the people who will embrace persons with disabilities in their workplace, right? And one thing that I think could work and which will be good for everyone is that there is an apprenticeship program, which the government mandates all the companies which has more than 30 employees, they have to have apprentices. They don't have a choice. The thing is, even though the government has not mandated that you got to take persons with disabilities or they should the quota in apprenticeships, my request to the companies is, why can't you carve out maybe 20% of the persons, it will be persons with disabilities. It doesn't have to be locomotor disability because, when you're taking people as apprentices, the government gives you a lot of incentives also. You don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about gratuity. You don't have to worry about the minimum and wages. There are quite a few things that they can do. And once they see value, and they should be prepared. It shouldn't be that, okay, now, I opened it and let them come and join. They should also be ready to include them. So as long as there is orientation, there are some job coaches available to help them and everything. And once they see them integrate better, I'm sure the companies will benefit. I'm sure the candidates will benefit. From 6% of persons with disabilities being graduates, Farangis, hopefully when people see that, these people will get better paying job, more and more people will become graduates. We got to use every tool at our arsenal and to make this change is what I would suggest.
Companies look for
Yes.
the skills qualification. They say they don't have enough qualification. So
Correct,
that's
correct,
what we were talking about the earlier, helping in the education itself so that they can pursue
yes,
higher
yes.
studies. What about for caregivers, Shiva? Have you been seeing, them using AI in different ways?
Extremely low, Farangis. Even for the caregivers, AI tools could be so much more beneficial, in their day-to-day activities. What are the various things that they could do to make it easier for them? Plan a trip to go from here to there. Let us say you want to look at schools, you want to look at colleges, or you want to teach cooking to your kid, because these are life skills, and the person is with the disability. And that's an important thing that a parent might want the kid to learn. And as caregivers, it is not like, somebody trained them so that now they can take care of the child. Many, the child just came and now they have to figure out ways in which they can take care of the child. So now there always lack of information and there is a lot of wrong information which is out there. So hopefully with AI tools, with proper things, for example, if you go to Perplexity, if you go to Copilot, if you go and ask a particular question, it will give you information and it'll also tell you from where it got that information from. So now they can go and see for themselves whether they believe that's credible information. I think is a very, very important tool for a caregiver. In my view, they are one of the major stakeholders who most of us are not focusing enough. And they are important decision makers who influence as to what a person with disability will or will not do. But if we can give them the right tools, I think we can make a huge difference.
As we wind up, is there anything, any takeaway you would want to, thought you'd want to leave in our viewers' minds?
It's very important for when we are thinking about inclusivity. And I've seen many people have that struggle saying, I don't know this. I don't know sign language. How do I deal with them? I don't know enough about intellectual disabilities. How do I deal with them? Where do you start? I would say start wherever you are. Don't worry about it, right? Because persons with disabilities are human. Just treat them as such. That's all, right? So if you're talking about a person with visual impairment, just go and shake their hands and say hello, because they will not know you, right? So, and those are the simple things. 90% of the deaf candidates and employees whom we have, deaf employees whom we have, their parents are hearing parents. And many don't know sign language at all. Okay, but they use natural signs to communicate. Similarly, we can also use natural signs to communicate and they will understand. So don't assume that only with sign language you can communicate with the deaf. So my thing is, don't worry about that. Just like a child will not have hesitation in just going and playing with other children. My request is even for adults to just take that first step. Take that first step, connect with any NGO of your choice which works with the persons with the disabilities. And in my view, I think it will just transform all our lives.
Thank you so much, Shiva. Thanks for being here today and for sharing your valuable insights on all this.